Have you ever felt sleepy, heavy, or unusually tired after dinner? Maybe you blamed it on age. Maybe you blamed it on stress. Or maybe you simply accepted it as something normal.
But what would happen if one of the simplest habits in the world could change what happens inside your body every night?
Not supplements, not a strict diet, not an expensive exercise program, just walking, a short walk after dinner. And today's story begins with a man named Miller. Miller is 58 years old. He is not overweight. He does not smoke. He is not the kind of person most people would call unhealthy. However, every evening followed the same pattern. Dinner, sitting on the sofa, watching television, and within an hour, a wave of fatigue came over him. His eyes felt heavy. His energy disappeared, and this kept happening every night. And sometimes he felt an almost irresistible urge to snack again, even though he had just finished eating. At first, Miller thought this was simply part of the aging process. After all, everyone eventually slows down, right? But during a routine health checkup, his doctor noticed something concerning. His fasting blood sugar was still within the normal range, but it was gradually rising. Not enough to diagnose diabetes, not enough to raise an alarm, just enough to start a conversation. The doctor said something Miller had never heard before. It is not only your fasting blood sugar that matters, but what happens after you eat. That sentence kept echoing in his head.
Because most of us think about blood sugar only when we hear the word diabetes. But every time we eat, especially carbohydrate-rich meals, our blood sugar rises. That is completely normal. The problem begins when those spikes become larger and more frequent. Over time, repeated glucose spikes have been linked to insulin resistance and increased cardiometabolic risk.
Researchers are increasingly realizing that what happens after a meal matters, not just fasting numbers.
Miller left the clinic curious. So he started reading. And what he discovered surprised him. Scientists had studied something incredibly simple. Walking, not running, not high-intensity workouts. Walking.
A systematic review and meta-analysis found that exercise performed immediately after a meal was more effective at reducing post-meal glucose spikes than exercise before eating.
The closer it was to the meal, the more immediate the effect of movement appeared to be. Miller could hardly believe it. Could a simple walk really make that much of a difference? This idea sounded too simple, like one of those health rumors that sounds good but does not actually work. Still, he decided to try it, not because he believed in it, but because he had nothing to lose. The next evening, after dinner, instead of reaching for the remote, he put on his shoes. He walked to the end of the street, then around the block. Not fast, not exhausting, just a comfortable pace. 10 minutes, that was all. The first night passed normally. No miracle, no dramatic change. But something unexpected happened. He did not feel sleepy anymore. The second night, he walked again. Then the third, then the fourth. Soon, it became part of his routine. And gradually, he began to notice changes. His evening energy became more stable. He no longer kept searching for snacks. He slept a little better. And perhaps most importantly, he felt in control again. So, is this proof? No. One person's experience is not science. But science has offered an explanation for why this can happen. When you walk after eating, your muscles immediately begin using glucose for energy.
Imagine your muscles as giant storage tanks. When they contract, when they pull glucose from the blood and use it as fuel.
That means less glucose remains in the blood after a meal.
Researchers have repeatedly observed that walking after meals can reduce post-meal glucose peaks.
Even relatively short walks have shown measurable effects.
One study found that brisk walking after a meal significantly reduced post-meal glucose peaks across different types of meals. Another study found that a few short walks after meals
could reduce post-dinner glucose to a similar degree as one longer walk in the evening.
And researchers looking across multiple studies have concluded that we
exercise as soon as possible after eating appears to be especially effective at reducing post-meal blood sugar rise.
This brings us to the turning point in Miller's story. Because the biggest change was not physical, it was psychological. For years, he believed better health required extraordinary effort, a strict diet, a perfect workout plan, a complete lifestyle transformation. But he discovered something different. Health is often built through small decisions repeated consistently. One walk, one evening, one day at a time. 3 months later, Miller returned for another health checkup. The doctor reviewed the numbers. No miracle had happened. No overnight change. But there was progress. The trend had improved. And perhaps more importantly, Miller had built a habit he could actually maintain. But there was progress. The trend had improved. And perhaps more importantly, Miller had built a habit he could. That's the secret most people miss. The best health habit isn't the most powerful one. It's the one you'll still be doing a year from now.
Now, before we finish, there's something important to remember. Walking after dinner is not a cure for diabetes.
It's not a substitute for medical care. And it doesn't give us permission to ignore nutrition, sleep, and
strength training, or other healthy habits. But evidence suggests it can be one useful tool.
A surprisingly simple tool. One available to almost everyone.
So tonight, after dinner, before you sink into the couch, before you scroll your phone, before another evening slips by unnoticed, try something different. Put on your shoes. Step outside. Walk for 10 minutes. Not because it's trendy, not because someone online promised a miracle, but because your body was designed to move. And sometimes the smallest habits create the biggest changes. If this story resonated with you, leave a comment below. Tonight, I'm taking the walk. And if you're interested in simple, science-backed habits for healthier aging, please subscribe to the Healthy Dad Habits channel. Because living longer isn't about doing everything perfectly, it's about doing the small things consistently, one step at a time.